The Glorious GOAT is notorious for having some of the best adaptations out of any superhero across all media. Having the most theatrically released solo movies, some of the best-selling comics currently, you cannot deny his cultural influence whether you love him or hate him. Since he's had so many depictions over the decades, I thought it'd be interesting to ponder on the idea of what a Mount Rushmore for Batman across media would look like. Everybody's got their favorite or childhood Batman that got them invested in the character or even the DC universe as a whole. Similar to my superhero Mount Rushmore video on Wonder Woman, I'll try my best to apply the same decision-making process behind the actual Mount Rushmore with its 4 US presidents to Batman's adaptations over the decades. So it's not exactly a matter of who are the 4 best Batman depictions across media or my personal favorites, because if that were the case, the lineup in this video would look very different. So if they were to create a smaller replica of Mount Rushmore for Batman, perhaps in a museum or on the Warner Brothers studio lot, who would be on it? If we want to look at the 4 Batmen that represent the most significant periods in Batman's popularity and cultural influence, I think Adam West's Batman in the 1966 movie and TV show is a good place to start. This wasn't the first live-action adaptation of Batman, as 2 serials were released in the 1940s, one titled Batman in 1943 and another titled Batman and Robin in 1949. While they did pave the way for the creation of Batman 66, that show was truly the birth of Batman in pop culture in a significant way. Also, there were elements of the 40s serials that have aged very poorly, such as its depiction of Japanese people and the use of derogatory stereotypes.
But of course, you can go.
That's the kind of answer that fits the color of your skin.
Known as Little Tokyo. Since a wise government rounded up the shifty-eyed Japs, it has become virtually a ghost street.
Batman was the biggest TV phenomenon in the mid-1960s, with other shows at the time like Lost in Space trying to mimic its style with brighter costumes and over-the-top villains. This series was the live-action debut of a lot of Batman's most iconic rogues. Characters like the Riddler, Joker, Penguin, and Catwoman made their mark in the cultural zeitgeist. After the release of Seduction of the Innocent by Frederick Wertham and the creation of the Comics Code Authority in 1954, Catwoman disappeared from comics for 12 years, likely due to Wertham's criticism of the character in Seduction of the Innocent, and the part of the Comics Code that stated criminals couldn't be glamorized or celebrated. Dude was yapping about the presence of Catwoman creating a homosexual and anti-feminine atmosphere in Batman books.
Is this nigga serious?
It wasn't until the success of the 1966 TV show and movie that urged DC to utilize the character in comics again that same year. While she wasn't the first character to don the mantle of Batgirl, the creation of Barbara Gordon stemmed from the executives of the 66 show wanting to have a character that would appeal to the female audience and originate in the comics. Her first appearance in Detective Comics issue 359 was released only 9 months before her debut on the TV show in 1967. The show catapulted the fan frenzy surrounding Batman, sparking a massive wave of merchandising from toys and lunchboxes to roller skates, Batman cowls, t-shirts, you name it, amounting to $150 million worth of merchandise sold in 1966 alone, as well as a big increase in Batman comic sales. The movie would become the first ever Batman feature film made. The craze surrounding this era of Batman was unprecedented for a superhero character, and the level of Batmania would be replicated with the release of the Tim Burton 1989 movie starring Michael Keaton. Due to the success and impact of the 66 series, Batman and his mythos had been heavily associated with campiness and goofy elements. The character would return to his darker roots in media after the creation of the 89 movie. I know for a fact that this is a hot take and I'm probably gonna get flamed for this. I don't really care much for the Tim Burton Batman movies.
Hang that nigga now!
But it would be downright disrespectful for me not to include this Batman on the Mount Rushmore. Michael Uslan was a producer and longtime comic fan who dreamed of making the definitive, serious version of Batman as a movie that shied away from the sillier elements people had become familiar with. After acquiring the film rights to Batman with Ben Melnicker in 1979, it became a decade-long journey to bring a darker version of Batman to the big screen, as many executives had a hard time seeing how he could work in a more serious setting. The success of The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller helped shape the idea of a darker, grittier take on Batman, one that returned the character to his roots and resonated strongly with audiences. Warner Brothers hired Tim Burton to direct a new Batman movie, someone who hadn't really read comics but was a fan of The Dark Knight Returns and The Killing joke. He wanted Batman to be a creature of the shadows, incorporating a batsuit that was all black, with the only exceptions being the belt and the oval surrounding the insignia, believing that using spandex or tights wouldn't be intimidating. Gotham City was reimagined to be this bleak gothic architecture, sort of a parallel universe version of New York that was much worse. The movie had insane levels of hype going into it. The poster that only included the bat symbol on a black background with the release date was found everywhere. People would pay $6 for a movie just to see the trailer for Batman, then dip. People broke into bus stops to rip off the posters, and Comic-Cons would sell bootleg copies of the trailer for upwards of $25. There were reports of moviegoers camping outside some theaters before the film's premiere. Fans even lined up to get bat-shaped logos shaved on the back of their heads in Philadelphia. The movie went on to earn $42.7 million in its opening weekend and surpassed $100 million within the next 10 days, becoming the first film to reach that milestone in such a short time. The merchandising campaign went through the roof with toy Batmobiles, clothing, board games, and books. Retail sales would end up hitting the $1.5 billion mark, with 30 million Batman t-shirts sold. It was so significant that it caused a global shortage of black material. The impact of the '89 film cannot be understated. Its success proved that the Batman IP could be taken seriously and paved the way for beloved adaptations that were more emblematic of the comics, such as Batman the Animated Series. It was the first time many audiences witnessed the deaths of Thomas and Martha Wayne, saw an origin for the Joker, and heard what would become the iconic Danny Elfman theme that's been synonymous with the character to this day. There have been a couple of other actors to put on the cape and cowl in live action prior to the 21st century, but the adaptation I believe deserves a spot on the Mount Rushmore is arguably the most beloved version of the character in any medium outside of comics, that being the version seen in Batman the Animated Series and the DCAU. In 1990, the president of Warner Brothers Animation wanted to develop other properties for animation after the success of Tiny Toon Adventures. One of the major properties of interest was Batman. Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski were tasked with creating the design for an animated Batman show, committed to establishing a noir aesthetic and using black background paper for the drawings instead of white. Radomski took some inspiration from the two Tim Burton movies and incorporated Art Deco elements when it came to the art direction. The writers drew from different eras of Batman comics, with some of the more popular episodes being direct adaptations of comics from the 1970s. The series gave rise to the creation of DC characters that would have varying degrees of impact on the Batman mythos, such as Renee Montoya, who was first conceived in the series Bible in 1990. Most famously, it introduced the character of Harley Quinn, who debuted in the episode titled Joker's Favor. Paul Dini based a number of her mannerisms and personality on her voice actress, Arlene Sorkin. The show also reinvented Mr. Freeze to be more of a tragic villain who tried to save his wife, making it the definitive origin for Mr. Freeze. B-Task gave fans the iconic vocal performances of Kevin Conroy as Batman and Mark Hamill as the Joker, who would go on to voice both characters in a multitude of adaptations for many years to come. Conroy's voice has always been the one I hear whenever I read a mainline Batman comic. The positive reception demonstrated that kids' television could be taken seriously and be portrayed as real character dramas. It would go on to be nominated for and win multiple daytime Emmy Awards, while continuing to trend upward in ratings, consistently beating other kids' programming at the time. Other shows on DC characters would be crafted thanks to the success of Batman, spawning what would be referred to as the DC Animated Universe, which is seen as the most definitive interpretation of the DC Universe outside the source material for many fans. This universe introduced the concept of Batman Beyond, featuring Terry McGinnis as the titular character in a story set decades after the original animated series, and helped popularize the character of Static through the Static Shock cartoon, marking his first on-screen adaptation. Justice League and Justice League Unlimited featured iconic voice performances that became the Kevin Conroy equivalents for other members of the Trinity, in terms of how frequently they portrayed those heroes in later adaptations, such as George Newbern as Superman and Susan Eisenberg as Wonder Woman. Paul Dini would become an acclaimed writer of not only the animated series, but for several Batman comics, such as the Batman Adventures Mad Love, which won an Eisner Award for Best Single Issue in 1994. He worked with Alex Ross to create a series of graphic novels centered on a handful of Justice League members, would continue to write Batman comics set in main continuity, wrote a 16-issue mainline run on Zatanna, and wrote the story for the first two Arkham games. A few of the titular cast from the animated series would end up voicing their characters in Batman Arkham Asylum, like Kevin Conroy as Batman, Mark Hamill as the Joker, and Arlene Sorkin as Harley Quinn. If I were going off my own personal bias, Arkham Batman would definitely have a spot in the Mount Rushmore, due to how it was able to maintain a lot of the comic continuity continuity and essence of the characters at play and its impact on the gaming industry. And playing Arkham City for the first time was my first proper introduction to the character, but I'm trying to be as objective as possible when considering who should be included among the four, and who has most significantly shaped Batman's popularity and place in pop culture. But I thought I'd highlight it as an honorable mention, largely because of its success and how it redefined the superhero gaming genre, influencing future installments like the Insomniac Spider-Man games. Batman Arkham City became the best-selling superhero video game of all time, and held that title until the release of Marvel's Spider-Man in 2018. The release of Batman Returns sparked common complaints that the movie was too dark and violent for children, which led to the Joel Schumacher entries, Batman Forever followed by Batman and Robin. The overwhelming negative reception of the latter led to a hiatus for the Batman franchise on the silver screen. The executives at Warner Brothers eventually sought to revive the franchise and take it in a drastically different direction from Batman and Robin. Christopher Nolan pitched to WB a Batman movie centered on Bruce Wayne's origins that was set in a more grounded reality, to have an extraordinary figure in an ordinary world. Hence why Gotham looks more like a recognizable contemporary city in America, as opposed to a more stylized Gotham seen in the Tim Burton movies. He came up with the basic idea for the story and teamed up with David Goyer to write the script, someone who was more knowledgeable in the source material. Goyer believed that the audience was getting tired of Batman movies becoming more cartoonish and campy, akin to that of the 60s show, which was in contrast to the way Batman had been depicted in comics for the past decade at that time. The goal was to have the audience care about both Batman and Bruce Wayne. The Dark Knight trilogy redefined the character in the 21st century and helped superhero movies be seen not just as fun popcorn flicks, but as well-told, meaningful stories, exploring themes of fear, corruption, and sacrifice. Batman Begins is arguably the greatest live-action superhero origin movie, creating the definitive origin story for Batman for the general audience. The creatives developed a philosophy of providing logical explanations for everything Bruce Wayne does and for his choice of weaponry, why he dresses up as Batman, the justification for the ear length, why the Batmobile looks the way it does. Nolan's style would go on to influence future filmmakers like Matthew Vaughn, who drew inspiration from Batman Begins for X-Men First Class. It also transcended gritty reboots as a whole, serving as a major influence for Casino Royale and helping set the stage for the Terminator reboot, Terminator Genesis. The Dark Knight raised the standards for comic book movies, becoming the first ever to reach over $1 billion in the worldwide box office. Nolan became the first major director in a feature-length movie to use IMAX cameras for big sequences. Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker is regarded as the best villain performance in a comic book movie to this day, becoming one of the most iconic versions of the character in mainstream media. The movie would be nominated for a total of 8 Academy Awards, with Heath Ledger winning Best Supporting Actor and Richard King for Best Sound Editing. The 2009 Academy Awards expanded its Best Picture category from 5 nominees to 10, with some industry observers believing one of the reasons was due to The Dark Knight not getting a Best Picture nomination. The impact of the Nolan films cannot be stated enough. This is without a doubt the most quotable superhero trilogy of all time.
I don't know. I swear to God. Swear to me!
Why do we force? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up.
It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Some men just want to watch the world burn.
To sum it up, I think this is a pretty good selection of Batman adaptations that would fill out a hypothetical Mount Rushmore. Batman 66 was the first to make a significant cultural impact outside of the comics, introducing iconic villains and a memorable supporting cast to casual audiences, significantly boosting sales and general recognition of the character. Batman 89 marked the first successful attempt at a darker version of the Caped Crusader on the silver screen after the 60s, becoming the fastest movie to gross over $100 million at the box office, a marketing campaign and hype train that even surpassed the 66 show. It also incorporated elements that would become synonymous with Batman, such as the Danny Elfman theme, later used in projects like Lego Batman and Batman the Animated Series. The DCAU provided an authentic depiction of the Batman mythos in animated form, establishing staples of the mythology that would endure for years to come, such as the creation of Harley Quinn, Batman Beyond, the reinvention of Mr. Freeze, and the casting of Kevin Conroy as Batman. The Dark Knight trilogy significantly raised the standards for superhero blockbusters blockbusters, achieving unprecedented success and earning praise as genuinely good films rather than just fun popcorn flicks, receiving Academy Award level recognition. Like I said in the beginning, this is solely based on cultural impact and how these depictions redefined the character for generations, as well as how the popularity of the character increased with each subsequent adaptation. But if you were to make a Mount Rushmore with your personal favorite Batman depictions, who would be on it and why? It's going to be interesting to see how audiences will continue to perceive the character with future installments on the horizon, because the GOAT's not going anywhere anytime soon.